Dream Theater, Distance Over Time. This is the, well, I'm not entirely sure the number, honestly. It's a lot. I'll tell you that. I think 13th? I think it was 13th album. 14th, 15th. I know it's past the 10 album mark, I tell you that. But, though I will say this is the third album post Mike Portnoy. And with Mangini. Yes, with Mangini on drum, who has worked with Steve Vai, I believe, before, on drums here. And this album itself is actually produced by guitarist John Petrucci, the only other member of the band that most people's name is actually remembered outside of Mike Portnoy anyway. Since most people will probably consider Steve Mangini as, the guy that won't even call him as his name as so much as the guy that replaced Portnoy. Boy, and bitch about that. And this is the album that I think should shut them up for the most part. That being, and here's my thing. I'm kind of glad I held off on reviewing a Dream Theater record, because this is one of the better albums I will probably put in my list this year, even if I already got kind of sort of here and there a little bit more out of Haken's Vector, even though some fans are in that band are here and they're there on that. Though I will say I got a heck of a lot more out of Leprous, and that's kind of in the same category of that prog metal, but at least for bands that came out of the 2000s, whereas Dream Theater had come out of the 90s and was one of the founding, or more so the 80s, but didn't get really booming at least within the more prog sphere of rock and metal until like the 90s, more so for their albums of Images and Words and Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from Memory. I'm told that they had an even heavier, and this album I'm told is heavier in the album that followed that up with Train of Thought, with that latter album I mentioned, which would be called Train of Thought, and this definitely is a heavier in a it's sort of progressive thrash, but not like Meshuggah progressive thrash, but it's more simplistically progressive metal, but still kind of like thrash oriented-ish. Like, there's technically, like, what most progressive metal bands who look to, like, power metal's particular style, which kind of is that weird line during the 80s between the thrash that evolved from speed metal, that was this sort of weird middle ground between the thrash acts that were dominating most of the underground of metal, or the real metal, of what was real metal at the time, as opposed to the more commercial cock rock stuff that was known as glam metal or hair metal, that thanks to the likes of what Van Halen had brought out, and bands that eventually more like Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Bon Jovi would start becoming more helped popularize over the years. And that's kind of where their particular prog metal, which also Queensrÿche more so kind of came out of. Though I would say King's X, another band that's kind of sort of in that sort of prog sphere, but in a way that kind of put them sort of closer to alternative metal, like those, not so much exactly like Tool, per se, but more so in a Faith No More-ish kind of way. But anyway, that's what I can tell you of what I know of progs over the years. And that's where they sort of come out of in that more power metal type way, in the Iron Maiden, Judas Priest-ish type of way at times. And this one, definitely, they kind of... even Petrucci himself had kept in mind, comparatively, Astonishing was very more keyboard-driven and sort of a modern-ish attempt at doing a 2112. starting off, for some people it started off strong, but eventually it fell off to the point where a lot of people were wondering if this band, even still, between that and the self-titled, were starting to lose their footing. This is the album where they're back in a step of a better direction, and whatever issues that most people usually have, even with their better records that make it harder for people to get into Dream Theater, are still kind of present, but I like what I hear. I mean, the first 3 tracks are essentially the singles that were released to promote this album: Untethered Angel, Paralyzed, and Fall Into Light. Though not exactly in that order, except the first track, of course. But now, a lot of people talk about Barstool Warrior. I understand that for sure. The other tracks are pretty good too. I personally do like Out of Reach. Is definitely one of the more mellower songs. Pale Blue Dot is definitely still one I like, and definitely I think that one's the more funkier one, or is that with Sand? I do have the issue in the sense some of it does, or at least aside from the first 3 singles, some of it blends together, except for the bonus track on this album, Viper King. Very, 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 like in a deep purple kind of way. Queen Stone Cold Crazy kind of thing. That's pretty good. Well, I'm not sure I can say much on Queen thing comparison, but yeah, there's definitely something. Viper King is definitely one of those really fun ones that stick out the most, and that's a bonus track of all things. But overall, I did enjoy what we got out of this record. It's definitely a little Metallica influences, more specifically whatever Kirk Hammett was doing was utilizing that certain particular Mesa. Before the rectifiers came to be, like long before the Dual, there was like the MC2, Mark MC2, like the Mark C2 or something, and one of those particular amps that Kirk and maybe Hetfield part of it probably had used, like either that Mark V or something. Those particular amps, something about the way that he used those, particularly through something more along the lines of like Master of Puppets or whatever, he compared it to, even though the riff itself that opens the track that I had just kind of, part of the track that I sort of played at first, from Fall Into Light, that one, I have some elements to that guitar riff that remind me of a certain technically bass riff that most people don't know is a bass riff unless you've seen the live thing on it, and that would be Doom the Bell Tolls. Yeah, that Cliff Burton little riff thing of... It's like a sort of... I'm keeping that. And I'm switching it back. It's sort of a very... Hopefully you can hear me on this one. It's sort of a very... much like that, but it's still a good riff, and a lot of the instrumentation helps with it. Eventually, it all comes together pretty well. Shades similar to, I guess, what I've known and heard of Metropolis. I will admit, this is my first album I've had with them, so I'm kind of a noob in terms of the albums aspect of it. But I have heard tracks from them. The sort of title track on Metropolis Part 2, and of course from Train of Thought, I believe, which was I Am, or As I Am, which I could see that particular track, and maybe possibly the rest of that album when I get a chance to listen to it, might have been the precursor to what Avenged Sevenfold would start using from this City of Evil onwards, mostly. And even more ironic how Mike Portnoy joined the band. And it's pretty clear, I guess, when it comes to, like, one of the tracks I guess Mangini had done, it seems, I guess, when it comes to writing, Portnoy played a bigger part, and you could kind of tell the writing isn't necessarily the best, but you could tell, at least with this record, it's, you know, they were able to compensate pretty well for it, and Petrucci's not as blah 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 about his stuff. There's a little bit, and super over the top about his technicality. There's certain intricacies to the way he does, and it definitely has some slightly more bluesier elements here and there, and he puts some more thought into how he does his stuff, This is it this time around. And the fact he's able to do that and produce, got to give him credit for that. And Ben Gross, who actually who mixed this record, I think he did okay. And sonically, I would compare it to those, like I said, with the Haken thing and going for that, which unfortunately somehow those bands somehow get lumped with into djent. And I guess there are some of those kind of things, but I wouldn't really go that far and say that. And I would maybe go more Gojira, which isn't even djent, as far as I'm concerned. But in fact, their style comes off less djent and more, even less even remotely close to even progressive metalcore, and more closer to something. Essentially, that is definitely way more Metallica than Meshuggah. That for sure with that. And I'd say this kind of goes more in that. I wouldn't say full on, all over the place, weird like Gojira, or at least as eccentric as Gojira. This one's definitely more mainstream-lined, and a lot of their stuff always comes off, even on certain tracks, even the softer stuff, even some ways lyrically, something I could see how this band may have been more the influence as opposed to Devin Townsend for John Cooper, and for when they did Comatose sessions, at least, before they started to some reason decide to stick with that. Well, between that and Evanescence, obviously, but anyway. Overall, Dream Theater, I'm glad I got this record. This one is actually quite fun, not kind of fun, and it's actually quite fun. Quite good. It's not blown me away necessarily compared to some of the stuff I've been listening to prog over the past few years. It's definitely overall definitely got me interested in wanting to actually go deep dive into their albums. So I'd say thumbs up. Potential to possibly rock if I do go into it more, though I may decide to go and listen to some more Dream Theater. Not to say Dream Theater, I meant to say actually Demon Hunter, but I'll probably still like it, but just because, especially even more so after finding out the band approved of my review, so that was nice. And that, especially of all days, had to be my birthday yesterday, so that was nice. But anyway, as far as the Dream Theater album, awesome. What you guys think of Distance Over Time, leave a comment below, let me know. What other, and in fact, aside from maybe certain albums I had mentioned, possibly, though I didn't get to mention Octavarium, I'm told that was another one of the higher, as far as the 2000s records go, that one's up there. I think that one had Forsaken. I think that was like my first song I've ever listened to from Dream Theater through that anime sort of music video they had, which was interesting-ish. But that's what I was exposed to, and something got in my eye. I'll fix that later when I'm done. But anyways, what did you guys think about it? Leave a comment below, let me know. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. And until hopefully maybe the Devin Townsend album or whatever decides to come out sometime this month, I don't know what. I've already seen Captain Marvel, and which review will probably be up with all these other reviews, because this is the best day I'm going to be able to upload all of them. And yeah, leave a comment below, let me know. Rock that like button with thrust if you must. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real. Also rock the like button and follow me on Facebook. Link in the description below. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell, subscribe button, and that bell and click that bell for notifications. And as always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I'll see you in the next video. Maybe the Devin Townsend one. Who knows, depending on how the surgery goes, I guess, for my eyes. Because this will probably be, of the videos that you will see, the last with me wearing these specs. Hopefully. So, yeah. Take care, y'all. And we'll see you in a few weeks. So, if you're lucky, maybe I might decide, if I feel up to it, I might be able to somehow do a Schmoedown Rocks. I don't know if I'll do a Schmoedown Rocks. I may actually do a Schmoedown All Access, or work something out with some other Schmoedown reactors. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, take care, y'all.